Welcome everyone again to Jersey Shore Women in Tech. A little bit about us three women here. I'm Brittany Jacobs, Software Engineering Manager over at Vidya, Allison Lamano, Product Management Lead at Define Logic. We co-founded Jersey Shore Women in Tech, and Jenna Gaudio, SVP of Operations at Vidya, is our Executive Director. Next
slide. What I would like to do, I would like to get somebody in.
Okay. Who we are. We were established in 2017 after being inspired by another Women in Tech event. Some of you here were at that event, I believe. But Alice and I had been at many other tech events in the area over the past 10 years and didn't really see a lot of women there. And so if we could just ask everybody to mute when they come in, that'd be great. Thank you. And so we saw this women's event, and there were hundreds of women there. And so we thought there's definitely a need for this in our area, since we weren't seeing a lot of them come to the events that existed. So we decided to start up our own Women in Tech event. We held our first event on January of 2018, and we thought that if 5 people came, it would be a success. And luckily 30 people came. Many of you who came to our first event are here today as well. So we thank you for sticking with us. In February of 2019, in February of 2018, our very first speaker was Jenna Gaudio. And then we were lucky enough a year later, she actually joined us as Executive Director. Our mission is to support, educate, mentor, and develop a network for women in the information technology industry. And Jersey Shore Women in Tech is focused on building and maintaining a local community that will fulfill the needs of women in tech, both personally and professionally. We also do some community outreach. So we did do a fundraiser a couple years ago to send girls from Asbury Park High School to coding and robotics camp. We did a second year of that initiative, and we plan on sending, this one is going to be junior high girls to that coding and robotics camp, but of course it's going to be virtual. We've had a little trouble setting that up because of COVID. So the latest is that this is going to be potentially starting up again this spring. So look out for that. And also we thank everybody that contributed to that as well. Also too fast. Also, I was just gonna say that everybody is welcome, not a man-hating group, not an anyone-hating group. You know, our focus is to give women a platform and educate women and support women, but anybody is welcome to learn or teach. Next. We're on all your favorite socials, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Follow us on there to keep up to date on all of our events. And we also have a private Facebook page. In here is where you can post things like celebrations for raised job promotion, anything like that. Suggestions for other meetups, classes, workshops, anything that our group might like. Share any relevant articles or blogs. If you got press, we would love to see that as well. If you're looking or hiring, we've definitely had quite a few people get jobs from posting in our group. And just ask advice, help, anything that you need. We're always willing to help. We're always looking for speakers as well. You could go to jerseyshorewomενintech.com if you want to apply, or if you know anybody that would make a great speaker, please let us know. Or if you have any ideas, if you want us to reach out to anybody, please let us know. Our sponsors are the fabulous Coworks and Vidya, without whom we would not be able to have our fabulous in-person events that we hope to have again one day. Coworks, as you guys know who were with us when we were in Asbury, do have a co-working space out of there. But they also have a new one in Red Bank too, so this is a little bit of information about that. They're right next to the Dublin House on Monmouth Street, and they have 8 rentable private offices in there. So you can reach out to team@coworking.com or just coworks.com if you want more details. Also, they're very, safe, COVID friendly, all that. Vidya is our other sponsor. Vidya is a music and media tech company located in the Bellworks campus in Homedale. We power the business side of music labels and media companies through an all-in-one platform that allows users to manage content, rights, payments, and view reporting on analytics and revenue. Jenna, do you know, is Vidya currently looking right now for anybody?
We're currently interviewing for a senior data engineer. I think that's pretty much it right now.
Okay.
If you guys were at my first talk with Traditional Women in Tech, I think 2 or 3 years ago now, it was about moving up the ladder and making things happen. I'm a big advocate of productivity, efficiency. Anyone that's worked with me knows that I'm always trying to get as much done, have the highest impact. But over the past couple of years, I've really honed in on trying to continue to learn and refine that skill. And part of that is diving back into the fundamentals of what Agile and Scrum really is. So I'm gonna do a brief overview of what those methodologies and frameworks are, and then how to apply them to anything. As we did intros in the room, part of that was so I understood who's in the room, what your background is, what is your day-to-day goals and objectives look like, so I could speak to it. We've got a pretty wide spectrum in the room, so I'm going to try to keep it somewhat general, but I'll point to where things make sense for you. So the foundation of Agile comes from a manifesto, which is based off of 12 principles. We don't have to get into them all right now. You can Google it. There's a whole thing written about them, but basically it breaks it down to these things, focusing a lot about giving autonomy to self-organizing teams, focusing on simplicity, and measuring the work that you're doing. So the biggest comparison of everyone says Agile is great, but what are you comparing it to? So often it's compared to the waterfall method, which, as you can just see at the top here, waterfall is when you go out to plan a project, anything that you want to accomplish, whether it's infrastructure, training for HR, doing a marketing campaign, or in most cases, when Agile is referenced to as software or product development. You think about what that whole project is going to look like, and you do it in iterations over time. And it's in these step-by-step process. And usually it takes a long time to get to the finish line. It's usually got a lot of different components in it. And when you're done, you are so far from when you started the project that usually it's evolved into something different than when you originally thought it was going to be. So it's actually a different project entirely. Whereas with Agile, as you can see in this graphic here, each segment of the project is broken down into little tiny pieces about what is the most valuable thing and how to get it out there as fast as possible so that you can learn if you're on the right track or not. So Agile methodology is a lot of things. You'll see a lot of blogs out there. People will champion it for many reasons. People will hate on it for other reasons. But basically, when you break it down, what faster and smarter actually means, it means that you're building a learning organization. So it doesn't matter if you're a 2-person company or a 5,000-person company. Basically, what you set up your organization to be like and what they value is going to be super important. So you never want to glorify one superstar. It does not benefit anybody, even yourself, to say, I'm the best. No one does it as good as me, or, no one is as smart as this person, or no one's as creative as that person, because it's just not sustainable. It's not scalable. It's not efficient. And what happens when that one person decides that they are so good that they can go somewhere else? And now you have no team because you put everything on this one person that's a superstar. What you want to do is take what you think is a superstar qualities from that one person and find a way to distribute it across the entire team. And in doing that, there's a lot of knowledge share, a lot of training, a lot of communication and feedback loops. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but basically you want to be able to increase momentum with scale. So if you add more people, which if you're a lean organization, you don't want to add too many people too fast, because then you end up with dead weight and lots of resources that cost a lot of money, especially when you're not yet profitable or you're trying to gain a higher margin or growth and profitability. Adding more people doesn't necessarily yield more progress. So you want to make sure that with each person that you add and each project you take on, there is an equation that it's going to yield faster momentum. And the way that you do that is investing in training, in replicating all of the things that you're already doing right, or that your superstar is doing right, so that everyone on the team can be a superstar. And often this leads to outpacing competitors, because competitors will copy what you're doing or copy what other people are doing. They'll try to mimic that superstar mentality that someone else has, but they don't have the scalability that you have and that you're building from the ground up. The next thing is being culture centered. So when you think Agile, I feel like before I really learned about it, I thought it was a lot of technical jargon and a lot of people being super smart and sophisticated on, how they could develop faster. But really, it's about the people, which like really shocked me when I kept reading about it and trying to understand it. And a lot of it is about giving autonomy to the entire team. You want everyone to be self-organizing. You don't want to have to micromanage or even manage in some cases. The goal is so that everybody that you work with can be personally responsible for helping move the team forward. And that usually gives people a sense of purpose. It allows them to open up their mind in ways that they might not think. Often you'll hear people say, oh, you're an engineer. You are about just solutions and logic. You're not creative, which is not true. I mean, how many people do you know that are both creative and have an engineering mind? There is no one-dimensional person out there, and there are many facets of your mind that you can work. And everyone should be allowed to explore those different aspects, and it makes you a better person, it makes you a better employee, and it makes a better team that you're building. It also allows for visible impact. There is nothing worse than when you go to work and you don't know why you're there or what your impact is. Usually in bigger organizations, this is a problem. I mean, anyone that was at my first talk 3 years ago, I walked you through my roller coaster of a career. And I've worked for very small companies, I've worked for big companies, I've worked for the government. And every time I found like the pros and cons in every situation, but with the bigger companies where I felt stifled was when I didn't know if what I was doing every day had any meaning or any impact on the company, or if somebody was just giving me paper and projects to push around. When you're Agile, those little iterations, you come up with a plan, you execute on the plan, and you get feedback. And that feedback is good or bad. Either way, you know if you're on the right track or not, and then you get to go back to work and do something meaningful again to try and get on the right track. And that just builds a good culture of people feeling like they are empowered to help the company with its mission, and that we're a team and a unit together. The next one is strategy. So you want to always be learning, and constant discovery requires constant evaluation and experiments. So if you're trying to run a marketing campaign and you don't know how it's going to do, don't invest a whole bunch of money and a whole bunch of time. Put out some surveys, set up a landing page, do something that's going to test the waters with your messaging and make sure that you're on the right path. Talk to your clients, get that discovery piece done, and constant delivery. Ship it, see how it works. And if it doesn't work, go back and reorganize how it's going to work, or realign what the goal is going to be, and try it again until you get something that gets a little bit of traction. And if you have proven traction, you want to invest more resources, more dollars, more people into what's working. But why wait to plan out an entire project just for it to blow up in your face in the end and call it wasted resources? Nobody wants to do that. You got to be strategic about your time, about your team, and about your priorities. And then, finally, minimizing risk. So I think, especially younger talent, it's hard for them to really know when they can make a decision or not. And I think a lot of that has to do with management. You need good management that knows how to train people to feel like they are empowered and that they have the tools that they need to make decisions. And you got to allow people to make mistakes. And I'm going to get into in a little bit, like how you can set up that framework so that people feel like they can have confidence in themselves to make decisions that aren't going to take down the company or cause any major problems. But in doing Agile, if you're doing things in little bite-sized pieces, you can ship things and learn something and be wrong, and it won't devastate the company or devastate a budget. This also encourages people to be more honest and transparent. So if they think something is going to work or it's not going to work, we're going to find out quickly. And that way people can share their insights up front without, feeling like they got silence in a meeting and then things started moving. And then everyone just kind of says, well, the boss says to do it, so just do it. And then you get a year later or 6 months later and you get to the end and it doesn't work. And someone's like, well, I thought that it wouldn't work for this reason. And now you've got a problem. It's like, why wouldn't you have spoken up? Like, how did we get that momentum down the wrong path? And then also it builds emotionally safe environment by allowing people to make mistakes, to know that it's not the end of the world. and that their voice and their insights matter, and that their creativity and their engineering and strategy minds all benefit the whole team. And when people are able to be that involved and engaged in their job and their purpose, usually you'll see a strong retention. I mean, we got a bunch of video people here, and that's because they like learning, they like growing. Kayla got a new job. It's something about going after inside of the organization where you can add the most value and understanding what that means for you, for the team, and for the company. So Scrum framework is pretty much taking the Agile methodology, which is, although we just talked a lot about it, kind of vague as far as, be people focused and, focus on like getting things done. The Scrum framework breaks that down into something that is like tangible for the team to execute on. So in product development, we have a sprint cycle. So a sprint is typically a time block amount of time. For us, it's 2 weeks. And then there's a backlog. So all of the things you want to get done get put in the backlog. And then you identify what your top priorities for the team are. And usually these have to align with the company's goal and the company's mission at this current time, and only do the most important work. You decide what work you can get done in 2 weeks that align with the goals that you're trying to accomplish, the campaign you're trying to build, the product you're trying to ship, whatever it is, you figured out for 2 weeks what you're going to do to make something that will yield a return at the end. So in order to figure out what that's going to be, it takes a lot of investment up front in planning. So what we have is called sprint planning, where all of the developers, all the product managers meet for several hours, most of a day, to figure out what all the tasks are to get a specific piece of work done, and then make sure that they have all the requirements and estimate how big the work is to make sure that we don't overplan or overbook 2 weeks. And then we get to work. Every day there's a daily stand-up, progress, feedback loops, communication between all team members, whether they're blocked, whether they have a question, whether they need a subject matter expertise to weigh in, whether they need to talk to a stakeholder, whatever it is, we know at the top of the day what is blocking progress. So by the end of the day, we have moved forward. And then at the end of every sprint, we review all of the work that got done, all of it. And it's a very rewarding experience for people to see, like, it wasn't just a to-do list that's done and forgotten about. It's a documented, rewarding reflection on what actually got done for all of us. And it's education and training for the people that worked on different things. And you have visibility into the work that's getting done by everyone on the team. And then we do retrospective, which is not necessarily the most fun, but it always makes us better. And that is the goal that we've all committed to. We talk very candidly about what we thought could have gone better, certain instances where things could be improved, conversations that could have been more productive, process improvements, iterations, etc. And basically that continues every 2 weeks to make us a better team. And when I first took over the product team, we weren't doing Agile. And I was very afraid of implementing this Scrum framework because at the time, the engineers were kind of just deciding what to do. The CEO was saying, I have an idea. The engineers would execute on it. The marketing team, which is what I was on at the time, would build a campaign and report back on whether people were, biting into it or not, which, I took as a personal responsibility because, I should be able to market it in a way that anybody would love it. But we weren't really putting together a strategic framework for what that progress was and documenting it, making sure that we were actually building the most valuable things at a quicker pace. And since we've implemented this, we've been able to move a lot faster, get feedback to the executives to say, here's what's working, here's potentially what could be problematic, what kind of analysis do we want to do on it, and go from there. Because in those 2 weeks, we might build something, learn something, and change course a little bit and be smarter than we were 2 weeks ago. And having that framework has allowed us to do that. So therefore, the day that we plan everything is worth the investment to have those yields at the end of the 2 week time period. There's also values associated with the Scrum framework: courage, focus, commitment, respect, openness. Just wanted to touch that it isn't just this very clinical framework of doing things in a cycle over and over and over again. It's still people focused. I recently wrote an article. I have an account on Medium where I just write random things. And I had been talking to a lot of students and people in different roles that are trying to cross over into tech or into product. And I just thought it would be helpful for people to know, what helped me better understand these things at the beginning, when it all just kind of sounded, vague and kind of useless as far as this imaginary like framework and process, and really nail it down for what it means for my organization and for me, because nobody and no company is going to work off of a template. Like, you have to make it your own. So I just documented my journey. If anyone wanted to see a lot of these resources I shared are inside of this article, either on LinkedIn or on Medium. Scrum.org has great references to things and really make it easy to understand and break down a lot of this technical stuff with glossaries and all the jargon that's used if you're interested. Does not look like it's rendering. Oh, here we go. Expect the unexpected. So I want to break down, what this really means for potentially any department and how it needs to be actioned, because it's like reading a good book, a business book. You read it and you're like, wow, that helped me learn something, but you're on to the next thing. And you sometimes don't retain all of the principles that they're trying to get you to enact in your everyday life. So one thing that I think probably gets the most complaints about Agile is that things move very quickly. And nobody likes to plan 2 weeks worth of work and find out that none of it is relevant anymore.
Yeah,
and sometimes it happens. Somebody have a question?
Oh, sorry. I'm not on mute.
It's okay. It's okay. But yeah, so nobody wants to plan 2 weeks worth of work and then find out that it's not relevant anymore. But that's truly what happens. If you find out that a competitor stole your ideas, or somebody ran the exact same marketing campaign that you wanted to do, or maybe that piece of infrastructure that you were planning to integrate with is being deprecated, like, you shouldn't move forward with that plan, especially if it's not going to work out in a couple weeks. So you always need to be evaluating every single day, what is the most important thing first? Let's see. So then we get into decision making. How are you going to figure out when to make decisions, how quickly to make decisions, when you are in a place where you are actually the right person to make the decision and are capable of doing that? And empirical learning, which is what Agile and Scrum is based off of, continuing to learn in these iterations, encourages taking action in order to keep progressing and getting better and faster. So there are 3 things that I always talk to my team about. One is I want them to have initiative. If I wanted to do it all myself, we'd end up in that problem where the work is siloed with one person and you're not actually helping someone else grow their career. So you have to think about, if you can do something and the decision is reversible, then that's probably a good indicator that you can move forward with something. If it's small enough and if it can be undone just as fastly as you enacted it, it's probably okay. This is also, really, I think, important in marketing, where you can kind of make decisions and move forward and test things out. Because if you get bad feedback, most of the time you can roll it back. With product, most of the time, if you do it in short iterations, you can roll it back. It doesn't always have to be the end of the world. The next one is data. Don't make that decision if you don't have enough information to make that decision. Your perspective is one perspective, and you should never go off of just your perspective, because at the end of the day, it's super limited. I don't care who you are. You need to talk to all the different stakeholders involved. And what is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is somebody that this decision is going to impact. If it's going to impact somebody else, another decision maker in the company, another department in the company, you need to talk to them and understand exactly how it's going to impact them, negatively, positively, and you should keep that information retained, because you are going to need to explain it, I guarantee, to somewhere, somehow, eventually, why you made that decision, and you want to show that you've thought in a 360 way about why this decision was made, and then going to the next one to show that you have good judgment. If you think about the impact of making this decision versus delaying this decision, that is another layer into understanding why it was better to make this decision now, to move a meeting forward, to test out a campaign, to try to do something that has a small amount of risk to get it done. maybe it's better to make the decision. If you think about it and delaying the decision has zero impact, like it is better to talk to more people, it is better to save money, it's better to do something else other than make this decision right now, then don't make that decision. If you're making a decision and you think it's going to have more of a negative effect than a positive effect, or it's close, you don't have enough data, and maybe you have too much initiative. So those are the three things I'm always trying to get people to understand in order to empower them and trust them to make decisions. Another way to break this down is like a RAID assessment. So what are the risks? So if something goes wrong, what are you anticipating? If you had to think about it, what could go wrong and how would you plan on handling it? And if you have a good answer to that, you've probably thought about it at least a good step. The second thing is actions. What are all the tasks and time estimates that it needs to get done? And associated with that is costs, right? So if it requires all these tasks to complete this project, and the project is going to be this big and this expensive, is that something that we should be doing right now? The other thing is issues. What are the roadblocks? Are there things in your way that are preventing this from happening? So if you are blocked somehow, maybe you can't even make this decision. Maybe you can't get this project done until you take care of this other thing, which is actually more important than the thing you were working on, now that you think about it more thoroughly. And then dependencies. Again, you never want to make decisions without aligning all of your stakeholders, all of the people that are involved, because it will help reduce friction and give you momentum. If every single time you try to complete a task and someone says, well, what about this? Or what about that? Or I didn't want to do it that way. Or I think I understand this better than you. You're going to have a problem. So do the legwork first of reaching out to your stakeholders and having those conversations with them to see maybe they do have a better perspective than you, or maybe you get them on board. I talk a lot about influence, and that's a whole nother presentation in itself. But ultimately, if you come prepared, if you have the data, you've done your research, you really care about what you're working on, you understand what the impact and the outcomes are, and you know how to do it. You understand all the tasks and how much time it's gonna take and the cost. Ultimately, you're likely to be able to influence somebody to understand your perspective and agree with you. If you haven't gotten all the way there and you don't have all that information, they might challenge you, and that's also a good thing. Setting priorities. So again, I cannot stress this enough. What is the most impactful thing right now? We all have to-do lists of some kind, but some days the to-do list you had yesterday is not the same as the one you had today. In fact, mine in particular, I know changes every single day. And I think that that's important for people not to hold on to what they wanted to do. I went to a product meetup maybe a year or two ago, and I remember talking about the backlog, which is essentially a giant to-do list for all the things that the product team wants to accomplish or the company wants to accomplish. And they were asking questions on backlog refinement, which is essentially how do you refine your to-do list? And one person was talking about how the person they are today is smarter than the person that was making that backlog or those other things that were done. And that really opened up a lot of perspective for me as far as saying, don't hold on to the backlog. You really shouldn't focus on, what you wanted to accomplish a year ago, 2 years ago, or maybe even yesterday, depending on what information you have right now or what the company is trying to accomplish right now or what's important to your personal brand right now. The next one is aligned with that is what are the goals you're trying to achieve? You should never be working on just tasks. You should never just be doing something to do it. Getting things done feels really good. I get the dopamine. I totally energized by getting things done. I get it. But if it's not aligned with what the bigger goal is and what you're trying to achieve, it's essentially wasted time and wasted energy. And it's a false sense of importance and impact. So make sure you understand. And if you're a leader in the company, you've made it super clear of what exactly needs to be achieved and essentially empowering the team to figure out how to get there and how to help. If those goals aren't set up and they aren't clear to you, to your team, to the company, you're going to have a lot of problems. You're going to have a lot of wasted resources and a lot of people confused and spiraling on if they're really making an impact for you, for the company, and for the team. This one is my favorite, number 3. Are you blocking progress of someone else? So, as an executive in particular, there's a lot of people empowered in my organization to be able to manage and lead things without me. But obviously, I'm here for a reason. If you're on a team, you're there for a reason. And often there's dependencies, and people need soundboarding and conversation and collaboration. Because again, going back to perspectives, no one perspective should make a decision ever. So if somebody needs something from you, you really have to weigh what are the priorities, what are the goals that need to be achieved, and is this person working and progressing towards those things, and are they blocked on me? And that kind of changes my to-do list. So anybody that works with me knows that I block out my calendar for all the meetings and all the things I have to do that day. But if someone slacks me or messages me and says, I need an approval of this, I need feedback on that, I'm having this problem, I need your advice. Generally, if that's the most important thing that we're trying to achieve at this time, I will do that instead of this. And that is about being agile and being ready to have your day blown up and embrace it, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is the most important, impactful thing. And that's a really hard thing to get past, especially when you look back on the things you wanted to do today and you got nothing done. It's hard to feel really good about all the things that did get done, especially if there's somebody else's, their personal responsibility. You still need to make sure that you're helping people do things the best that they can, as fast as they can, as smart as they can. The fourth one is, are you the right person for this task? I love to do things myself. I love to get in there. I love to lead projects. I love to write blogs. Whatever the execution work is, I love to do it. And it's been hard for me to really kind of, move into a management role where I have to now mentor and manage other managers. So I become less important to the day-to-day. And it's really hard to sometimes realize that I don't have all the information because I'm not in the product team day-to-day. I'm not in the marketing team day-to-day. So if you're not inside of the team that has to get something done, or you're not the person that has the most information or the most believable person to take this on, you might want to ask for help or delegate something to somebody that could do it better. Or you need to ask that person to educate you and train you to be the person, if it's been decided by the organization or by your manager that you are the right person and you just need to grow and learn that skill set. However, if it's something you shouldn't be doing, if the most important thing for you to do is not this thing, but it could be the most important thing for somebody else to be doing, that's how you build a great team. And that's why CEOs and founders hire more people, because they can't do all the sales, they can't do customer service, they can't do business development anymore, because they have to think about strategy and they have to think about operations and fundraising and things like that. So it's all about making sure you get people doing the right thing for the right reason. So this is another one, cutting corners. Agile gives you permission to cut corners. This is about creating systems, not overhead, and finding a process that works for teams to stay aligned, informed, and progressing, not doing paperwork. So at bigger companies, definitely in the government, there would be so much documentation. You would have, SharePoints and resources, intranets of information for everything under the sun to be documented. There are whole teams dedicated to documentation. And as somebody that likes to be organized and informed, like that seemed great, but it very much slows the team down and causes a lot of overhead. And, if you want to have a team that's in charge of documentation, that's going to cost you the cost of a team, and sometimes as a lean organization, that's just not something that's reasonable. So there's a lot of software out there that allows it to be both your process and your documentation. Trello, Jira, Monday, Airtable, they're all kind of different softwares that allow you to break things down into tasks and maybe tag them with project groupings. It allows you to assign different people, and it allows you to keep the whole process visible for everybody that's shared on these kinds of boards or processes or workflows. Notion is also a place where you can share information, and Stack Overflow, I think, is great for businesses and developers. For every time there's a question about something, the goal is to not have to ask that question again, or for when you hire somebody else, for them to know where to find the answer to that question. Because if someone doesn't have to ask another someone, you've reduced the amount of resources that are being used for that knowledge transfer. So if you can reduce the amount of repetitive questions being asked, if you can create some sort of educational resource that people can self-help or be involved and feel included without having to continuously work one-on-one on transferring that information, it will help you move a lot faster, and it'll free up a lot of time for people to actually do the work, collaborate, or just be creative thinkers. Time blocking your experiments. So again, this goes back to that, sprint of being able to figure out what phases you want to do things. You always want to think about what the whole project is, and then you want to boil it down into different phases that actually make sense. So what gets your attention gets done. Deadlines have to have a meeting and always have action items. So what you want to do is figure out what is the thing that gets you to value. Because as soon as you figure out something that is valuable, you want to put that out into the world and see if it actually works the way that you thought it was going to work, and see what your obstacles are going to be. Most of the time, you're never going to be able to answer all the questions you're going to have once you implement something. So figure out what your phase one is, time block it. Try not to say in 6 months, we're going to have this, because it's going to be a whole new world 6 months from now. I mean, obviously, this is a great experiment in itself, being in a pandemic, because we had plans in March. I was, at a meeting in New York City the day we decided we were going to have to go remote. And I was working a schedule that was going to be part-time in the office, part-time remote. And then we threw it out the next day when we realized it wasn't going to be safe based off of more information. And that's just one perspective. I mean, you think about it on a global level, everybody is trying to learn as fast as they can so that we can solve problems the best that we can. So figure out, what you can do today to have the most impact. When your first phase of value is, putting that out there and seeing if you're really hitting that bar, or what the phase 2 is, because the whole point is to constantly get better. So when you ship that first phase, it's not that you can pat yourself on the back and said, we did it. When you get to the end of that, you already have plans that you want to make, things you want to build, and like executing on that, and just validating your assumptions that this next step is actually step 2, because often you thought this was going to be step 2 and it's not. So project cycles, again, to just reiterate, you want to test your ideas very early. As soon as you think you've got something that's valuable, ship it, and then get that feedback, and then refresh your ideas. And that is what your cycle looks like. It's really that simple. And here's something that, you may have heard. I totally manage this way. I believe deeply in radical candor. I think people struggle to understand what it really means. I definitely did it first. It's not about being so honest that it's painful, but usually it's a little painful. And I love this picture, because this is not what radical candor feels like, but usually it does lead to happiness if you are really empathetic in your feedback to each other. It's not just a manager to employee thing, it's peer to peer. If you think that somebody could be helped with information that you have or perspective that you have, why wouldn't you tell that person how to make their life better, how to help them be more successful, to get things done faster? You don't gain anything by keeping information to yourself most of the time. Obviously, you have to do it from a place that is caring deeply about this person and the project, because hurting people and upsetting people is obviously not an efficient way to move forward. A lot of this comes into play when you're doing retrospective. It doesn't help anyone to have a quiet room where nobody thinks anything can be improved, or you don't want to share something because you don't want to throw someone under the bus. How is anybody going to solve problems or do better if you don't let them know what those problems are? That's just something that every single team should be, and it's a two-way street. As a senior manager, I absolutely embrace and value when my direct reports or anybody in the company, says, hey, Jenna, I didn't agree with you on this, or I didn't like how this was communicated, or don't you think it could have been done this way? And sometimes, often, it's a lack of perspective and information that I can share to build a relationship with that person, to grow the rapport, because I can't talk to everybody in the company every single day. Nobody can. So being able to clarify misunderstandings or to give more information, I think really deepens the trust in between colleagues and teams. And I think that's a really important thing. I think that's way more important than the niceties of like, how was your weekend? And this is odd weather. I think, really being able to show that you care about people and show that you're focusing on helping them and the goal, and being able to take that feedback yourself, because you're not perfect, creates a kind of synergy that really helps teams grow much faster than most. And then this is the thing you need to be asking every single time. I've been trying to teach this to my team recently more than ever, is it worth the effort? And it sounds out of context. It sounds like it's somebody trying to get out of doing work to do less. Sounds like a bad thing. But if you are part of an efficient and motivated team, is this worth the effort is a really smart question, because you want to make sure that you're not detracting from what the actual goal is. So if the goal is to grow the company, or to get more engagement from your current customers, or if it is to build a more efficient infrastructure, or to become profitable, if you are doing something that is actually not worth the effort, something that is going to burn resources, something that's going to take your time and energy, and why would you do that? Your time is valuable. My time is valuable. Everyone needs to feel confident enough to know that your time is super valuable. Your skills are very valuable. So thinking about, is this the best use of my time and my skill set to contribute to this team and this company? And hopefully the answer is yes. But if the answer is no, you need to talk to your team, because you're a self-organizing, self-managing team, and say, this is a great idea. And I don't know if it aligns with the goal that we've been talking about. Can we just make sure that it is going to end up leading us to the right place? And that conversation is hard to have, especially in a room full of people that are super excited about a new idea, especially when it's your boss. You don't want to disappoint your boss. But at the end of the day, it would be much more disappointing when a bunch of time was spent investing in something for it to not really be impactful, or not really land the way you wanted it to land. And now you got to go back to the drawing board. And instead of the momentum of getting something done, you're feeling like you didn't accomplish something, and you're kind of in a rut now, because you got to dig out and try to find momentum in another way. This is one of my favorite quotes. There is nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all. Oh, hold on, let me plug my computer in. So again, doing something that's not going to get you where you want to go isn't actually a feel-good moment. A lot of people confuse that, and motion is not the same thing as productive action. We read that in a book recently in our book club, and I think that it's really important that people understand that just because you feel like you're checking things off the list does not mean that you're making a big impact or value to a company, which a lot of times people will get to the end of the year and they said, I did all these things, but you need to understand how these things, align with the company goals and the company mission, and how that actually worked out. And that is what helps you grow in your career, in your mindset, and in management, both of a company, a team, and yourself. Things that are worth the investment. So if we go back to that, first slide where I'm talking about what Agile actually means, you have to remember that the ROI is about the long play and not what feels productive this minute. And the things that actually are worth the investment, that I will argue anybody to the core, is one, training. I think one of the biggest mistakes that startups make is that they don't figure out what their training process is. And training also for any company is not just when the person starts, the first couple weeks that they come on and they're brand new and they have no idea what your company does or what they do. It's not just that, it's ongoing. Training never stops. If your company is changing and evolving and growing, there needs to be training around that. If the product is evolving, if your marketing, if your branding, anything is changing, if the infrastructure is changing, the whole team should be trained on those kinds of changes at scale. And that sounds a little bit scary, but if you have a process in place, if you have people that are owning that and embracing that and championing that, it's not as big of a time suck as it sounds like. What is much worse is when you hire people and they don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing. They don't know exactly where they're adding value. They're always asking for help. They're going down the wrong path, and you have to either do their work over or you have to help them, fix it. None of that is efficient at all. Going back to the not having a superstar, you want to make sure that you are investing in every single one of your employees to a way where they themselves are a superstar. And if you do not look at all of the people you are working with and all of the people that you manage and think they are a superstar, they're a superstar, they're a superstar, then you are not doing enough training. So figuring out what that means, and again, getting a feedback loop. So when you are onboarding people or training them or having classes or lunch and learns, ask the people, is this valuable? If people aren't showing up, why aren't you showing up? What could we do that would make this valuable for you to learn? What do you want to know? Are you in the right role, or are you interested in doing something else? What motivates you? All of that is part of training. And I think the next part, which is culture, is kind of a category of training, because if you are a learning organization, if you're invested in making each employee a superstar, if you're invested in thoughtful, empathetic, honest collaboration, if you are mission focused and you have clear goals, those are all things that build a great culture. I think this is also investing in fun things, and obviously it's harder during the pandemic. But as Stephanie, who's on the call, can attest to, we definitely planned a lot. We put a lot of time into thinking, what is going to help people feel seen and heard and valued and laugh and be able to connect, because it's really hard to not have those water cooler conversations or overhear those jokes in the office that you're used to having. I definitely don't get to talk to as many people. I definitely don't have the friendly, chummy conversations with new people as quickly. And to be aware of that and make sure you have a vehicle to connect people, to help them speak about it, to cross-breed departments and skill sets so that people understand the value in each other, you're gonna be able to sidestep issues where the sales team doesn't understand the marketing team, or the client success team doesn't understand the engineering team, or the operations team is completely unseen and completely unsatisfied because people don't even realize that the company is continuing to operate because they keep things on track without any disturbances. And being able to get everyone to understand how we are a team is part of the culture, and it is your responsibility. And then planning. So again, I thought when I rolled out Agile Scrum framework to a team full of engineers, I think it was like one of my most nervous moments at the company, to tell them that they were going to have to sit in a room for several hours a day to plan out a bunch of tasks before they could even get on the path to doing something and checking off all these things and feeling like they have progress and investing all this time. I thought that they were going to be against it, but they actually weren't. They embraced it. And then at the, as we set out, I said, if it doesn't work, we won't do it. We'll do something else, which is the whole entire mantra of Agile. If it doesn't work, don't keep doing it. But the truth is, it really did work. And it's never perfect. That's why we have retrospective. We think about what we could do better. And then when we do planning the next time, we try to implement those things. But planning and having the whole project figured out, what is the end goal? And then what are all the things that need to get done to get you to that end goal? And what are the blocks that you can break that up into to get one piece done at a time? Because maybe these back pieces change, it changes everything. So making sure that you don't just take off running and say, I have a good idea, we're gonna do it, and really think about things all the way through, incorporate all the different data points, all the different stakeholders and perspectives involved, and really get buy-in to what you're trying to do with a clear plan, with that everyone has been communicated and understands if they're involved in executing on the plan or impacted by the plan. Is very important, and is totally worth the investment. And that's pretty much it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but I can pretty much speak to the pros and cons of all the things and all the hiccups and roller coaster ride that is taking a marketing department Agile, product operations, all of it. At the end of the day, I think it's definitely worth it.